We're back with another episode of Underrated. I'm Lefty.
Welcome back. I'm Bo.
We've got an exciting one today, talking about a couple of different things. Is there anything in the recent happenings of the sports world you want to talk about first, Bo?
Yeah, definitely. We've got some good stuff for you today. Quality stuff. Some happenings, as always, this past week in the sports universe. Some surprises, some drama, some fun. So we'll dive right in. Let's start off with some Major League Soccer news. The great Wayne Rooney is returning to the MLS, folks. That's right. He's also returning to the DC United, but this time as their head coach. The former Manchester United and Everton striker just left Derby County last month, and it told most everybody around him he was planning on taking a break, but that wasn't the case. Rooney cited his connection with the club and what he feels to be an exciting opportunity back in the MLS as his main reasons for returning to the States, even after multiple clubs in both England and Europe had reached out to him. But not everyone's happy about the hiring of this 36-year-old icon lefty. A lot of his English critics have called this a blatant step backwards in his managerial career. To which Rooney responded that he found the reaction to be, quote, a bit disrespectful to this league. So, we've touched on this exact topic in other conversations. How important is this as a soccer fan? What does this say about the MLS, Lefty?
Well, it seems like a lot of English players are, setting down roots here and coming back. I mean, you know, David Beckham has continued to invest in MLS. It looks like, Rooney is back, who, has always been a fan favorite. But, in other news from the UK, Welsh star Gareth Bale also just transferred over to the
Absolutely.
MLS and just made his debut.
Yeah. It's nice. He's taking the scenic route. He's going to L.A. and enjoying it just as like you said, David Beckham had done. Good to see.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and I'm not certain if this trend will continue. Obviously, I'm sure that the MLS and myself as well would hope that the league continues to increase in terms of world rankings. But at the moment, it seems like a pretty good destination for players who are maybe a little bit past their peak, maybe not able to compete in the Big Five leagues, but are still wanting to play and still have things to contribute to teams.
Yeah, definitely. For those of you who don't know, the Tour de France is well underway. But on Tuesday, stage 10 of the race was halted for several minutes after protesters parked themselves in the middle of the course and lit flares to block riders. The protesters were there to raise awareness on climate change. They had chains around their necks. Others had shirts on that read, "We have 989 days left." They were physically removed by local authorities at some point. Now, Lefty, I know this is a topic of conversation that hits home for you. And if you'll remember, this just happened last month at the French Open as well. Do you believe this is helping raise awareness at all? Or do you believe there's a better way to use stages like the French Open and the Tour de France, differently to get a message across? What are your thoughts?
I think that's a difficult question. I don't know what methodology is the best to raise awareness for these things.
Sure.
You know, at the present, there's a clear problem, and there's not any true solutions being offered, nothing being implemented. So, at worst, it's just a cry out to the empty abyss. People
Right.
don't exactly know what to do about these pressing problems, and at least they're trying to do something, even if it is disruptive to the Tour de France.
For sure. There's a lot of gray area in many different topics. So especially with organizations, everyone is sort of tiptoeing around certain topics. They don't know where to go. They don't feel comfortable, and you know there should be confidence there. There should be confidence to be able to speak and work, and I think work together. And I think if we could find a way to further communication, then we'll be able to move forward in different ways, and you'd see less of this. But you know just in the last week, we've had some pretty crazy quotes from current and former NBA players about, well, current and former NBA players. The great debate, right, amongst all sports is the how good would they be if they played today question, man.
Now, I don't want to cut you off here, but are you going to fall down the same rabbit hole that tricked ESPN?
Yes. Well, that's what we're going to talk about, right? So there are a couple statements here. So Scottie Pippen, former Bulls great, during a courtside interview during Summer League play, stated he thought current players in today's game are better than the players of his era. Well, that's a huge statement. I haven't watched any. Obviously, it's not NBA regular season, but I'm sure Charles Barkley would have went off. Um, Golden State Warriors forward Andre Iguodala appeared on the Dan Le Batard show and said he believes Rasheed Wallace would be a top 5 NBA player in today's game, stating if Rasheed played in modern day basketball, he'd be better than Giannis. And I love Giannis. Uh, but, the quote getting the most attention wasn't even a real one. So, as you just touched on, Lefty, ESPN is getting destroyed right now. Had to issue a public apology for airing a fake John Morant quote. One that came from Twitter account at Ballsack Sports. The claim Morant said Jordan would be just another superstar in the league today. It also went on a fake quote John Morant is saying, "You got me, Steph, Luka, Dame, Trey, and then guys like Bron, KD, Giannis, Kawhi. It's not just one superstar and a bunch of, average dudes." Now, Morant did say in an interview with Taylor Rooks that he would have cooked Jordan, but this comes after he stated he would thank MJ for what he did for the game. He's willing to say he'd cook anyone at any level in any sport. That's just the confidence coming out of, Ja. So, Lefty, do you like these types of conversations? Or do you shut it down when it comes up? Are you one of those people who entertains it, or do you just say, nope, no comparison, different time, no thanks, not doing this?
Yeah, not conversations that I actively participate in. I think that different eras play different styles of basketball, and they trained in different ways to hone different skills that were of different importance. That being said, I don't think you can be mad at Ja for saying what he said. I think I'd be more disappointed if he didn't have that confidence. It didn't go out there,
Sure.
wanting to be the best.
Yeah, I mean, he also stated that, who's the best soccer player in the world? Messi. I'll take on Messi. Let's go one on one. I think I'm a little just more surprised at even now with ESPN not verifying sources or just even looking at it a little bit deeper. I
Yeah,
mean, I know Ballsack Sports sounds like, a legitimate, serious sports, Twitter account, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
pulled a
that is
fast one.
super surprising, but at the same time, it's not. They might have news in their name, but at the same time, it's an entertainment network, and they're there to generate conversation in the same way that that Twitter account, Ballsack Sports, is trying to do.
Yeah, agreed. There's I mean, what? There's a billion different accounts out there. It's ESPN has a lot of people working for them, though. Do better, guys. I don't know. So, I wanted to jump into our first player of the day, if we could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, over the past few weeks, you've inspired me personally to really get into some soccer.
Oh wow.
And yeah, my history with soccer has been watching, limited MLS play over the past decade, watching Premier League games off and on throughout that time, accidentally turning on USA on Saturday morning. But, as I've started researching here recently, I start to fall down this rabbit hole, as I do with all sports. I get into statistics that drive the sport, just like I do with American football, NBA, MLB, boxing, etc. And I came across a player whose name you may recognize, but perhaps hasn't been recognized approximate or appropriately for what he did during his La Liga tenure. His name has consistently showed up alongside other greats in the game, but he has never been recognized as a star. So today we're going to talk about retired Spanish footballer Roberto Trashorras. You
Let's
like
get
that?
into it. Let's get into it. I think that La Liga is something that's it's definitely not a league that's followed too much in the U.S. So I'm excited for this one.
Absolutely. So Trashorras finished his youth career with FC Barcelona. He made a singular appearance for them in 2001 when he came on as a second half substitute. By '03, he moved over to Real Madrid, but again, only managed to appear for their reserves. In 2005, he joined Segunda División side CD Numancia. Again, featured very little during this time, not even a third of the games if you look at his stats. But he switched over to UD Las Palmas the following season, and it was there he was able to finally establish himself in professional football. So obviously a bit of a chaotic start to his young career, but we see this often, right, Lefty?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to break through those youth ranks.
Yeah, in 2008, he signed a 5-year contract with RC Celta de Vigo of Division 2. From the get-go, he's a starter. He's established. He's found his groove. And as a central midfielder, he had his best season for them in '09, but that was only 9 goals in 38 matches. So by 2011, he was looking for a new opportunity. And after reaching an agreement to terminate his contract with Celta, Trashorras moved to Rayo Vallecano, where he would spend the next 7 years and final years of his career as their captain until 2018. Finally, at age 37, he announced his retirement, right? So you're probably out there saying, where are you going with this, Bo? What are we talking about here? This guy had mediocre stats his entire career, but did he? Okay, so I want to focus in on his years with Rayo. Well into his 30s at this point. But what you could consider his most prime years of his career based on our conversation here. So let me throw some Liga Primera Division names at you, Lefty. Javi, Busquets, Iniesta, Gabi, Sergio Ramos, Toni Kroos, Lionel Messi. Some big names, right?
Absolutely. Stars that
Huge
last
names.
of recent history.
Right. I mean, these are, legendary star names. These players were in the top 10, finished in the top 10 from 2013 to 2016 in total passes. Want to know who was number one every single season through that time period?
Our friend Roberto.
Our friend Roberto. Absolutely. How about another stat? Passes per 90 minutes. Now, fair weather soccer fan like myself, anybody else out there, until I started digging deep into these metrics here, passing, just as it does in the NBA, allows a team to procrastinate, to build up a play. It tires the other team. It's all about maintaining possession. Trashorras finished second, fifth, and third, respectively, over that same time period. Again, only getting beat by names like Javi, Iniesta, Toni Kroos, and Juan Carlos Valerón. All right? 9. Accurate long balls. Now, this is a stat that throws me, okay? Because if I'm looking at this type of list, I should only see goalkeepers. I mean, there's not a lot of position players out there that are attempting an absurd amount of long balls in the game, honestly. But it's not the fact that he attempted so many a season. It's his accuracy. Again, during that time period, he finished first overall. First overall again, and ninth. Over that time span, and think about this, he had more accurate long ball completion percentage and a better percentage than every goalkeeper in the entire league.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so moving on. Free kicks. If you know anything about Rayo, you'd probably say, well, this is going to suck. Rio players are fouled notoriously more based on their style of play. Okay, all right. He finished first, second, and first in that same time period with his accurate free kick percentage. So, listen, I challenge you to find some film on this guy. Amazing. Short game was outstanding, making constant quick transition. He was a genius out there. He was like a wizard. So ask yourself, soccer fans, who has created more goal scoring chances per game from a deep lying position than Javi? Roberto Trashorras. Who has averaged more passes per game than Sergio Busquets? Roberto Trashorras. Who has averaged more than 10 long passes per game in La Liga history? Roberto Trashorras. So even though his passes per 90 minutes decreased over his later years, his short passes per 90 minutes increased every year. Now, these are some deep stats we've covered. These are sort of obscure metrics, right? But anyone who understands the core of soccer knows that the numbers are they're beyond impressive. In fact, he was a mastermind in regards to this part of the game. And as your children are taught at an early age, you're taught when you're playing at a competitive level, it's not just about goals, it's not just about offensive stats, but on the back end, it didn't lead to any other accolades for Roberto. There were no championships, there were no personal accomplishments, right? But what we can say is that he was a hell of a soccer player, a great captain. But as we know, and we've discussed this in the past with other awesome players on this show, greatness isn't a skills competition. So, with all that said, I have to ask you, Lefty, is Roberto Trashorras underrated?
That's an interesting question, and he's an interesting, example of a player. Playing that, he played central midfield, but largely focused on, he was a defensive midfielder. In
Right.
that defensive midfield positioning, you don't get any love from the fans.
Do not.
It's an understated position that is largely silent. Even with the impressive deep passing that you touched upon, when you play that deep in the field, when you're not an active part of the attack much of the time, when you aren't there on transition play, counterattacks, you don't get the glory, and that's compounded when you play for a team that isn't among the best in the league.
Agreed.
So that definitely contributed to his status as someone that is under the radar. I think that also when you play for a team that's not great, you miss a lot of the competitions across Europe that build lifelong fans. When you're not playing in the Champions League, when you're not playing in any other large European competitions, fans just don't see you. And as we touched upon to begin with, La Liga just isn't the most popular league abroad.
Right.
It is,
Unfortunately.
it is one of the big five, but unless you're watching Real Madrid when Messi was there,
Right.
not a lot of folks are tuning in. So yeah, I do think he's a bit underrated, and I think the importance of that central midfield position often goes underappreciated, especially when they're more defensive. And I know that he was not the most he's not the best defensive player in the world,
Right. Not at all.
despite playing that defensive position, and I think that hurt him a bit. But yeah, he definitely had the ability to affect games with that passing, and I think in a different world, in a different scheme, that could have been highlighted much better. When you think about players currently playing, you see Christian Eriksen, who should be announced with Man U any day now, playing higher up the field in that distributor role, in a role that
Sure.
creates goals. He gets a lot of attention because of that poise and passing ability. But he's also more actively involved in the attack. He dictates how that attack looks. And I
Sure.
think in a different scheme, in a different system, you know, Roberto really could have flourished and shined in a different way.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, he was a fun player to do some research on. Uh, I wanted to take kind of a different path. Obviously, when we think football, we think Premier League. We think big names. We look at this, but as I was looking into La Liga statistics, I kept coming across his name over and over in different weird metrics, and they his name was alongside these awesome names. And digging into it a little bit more, just to kind of see where his how his career had played out over the years. I mean, very interesting. I was able to watch some videos of him playing out there, and a very skilled human being. So this was a super fun one, definitely to look into.
Yeah, for sure. And he's the type of player that doesn't get the headlines, but great teams are built around solid
Absolutely.
players like him. It's unfortunate that he never really got too much exposure in international play. He never featured for the senior team
Sure.
in Spain, and didn't get a lot of exposure in Champions League play. But at the same time, he did have a great career, and it looks like he's coaching now.
Yep, absolutely is.
He is coaching, so maybe this isn't the last we'll see of him. But I
Right.
do agree he is a bit underrated.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes. Again, Roberto Trashorras, if you're out there, I know we have some international fans. Somebody let this man know we're talking about him. All right. Yeah, we're going to take a quick break. We get back. We're going to jump into somebody Lefty wants to touch on. We'll be right back.
And we are back. Thanks for sticking with us here. We heard that interesting, dive into Roberto Trashorras, and I want to go in a different direction here.
All right.
Really switch things up today, Bo.
Uh-oh.
I want to talk about not an athlete that I think is underrated, but rather
Okay.
an event. We're going to do a deep dive into the world of track and field.
This is an underrated first.
It is. It is. Now you might know it. Our listeners don't, but I'm not a traditional fan of track and field.
Yep. I can
But
confirm.
but July 15th does mark the beginning of the World Athletic Championships, and this iteration is being hosted in my neck of the woods, right up here in the Pacific Northwest, Tracktown, USA, better known as Eugene, Oregon. So
Yes.
obviously, with this massive world event happening in my backyard, I'm going to attend a few of these sessions, and that's what spurred my segment on this episode.
All right.
Are you familiar with the World Athletic Championships?
I'm not at all. I mean, I was wondering why there was a reason you grew out your hair and only have a mustache like the great Steve Prefontaine, but now I know.
Now you know. To honor the legacy here of
Yeah.
of Tracktown, USA.
Beautiful.
Hoping to attract Phil Knight.
Oh,
Get
yeah.
some of that cash.
Definitely. I'm sure I'll have a shoe made for you in no time.
No time flat. So anyway, the World Athletic Championships are a biennial competition that represents the highest level of competitive track and field, arguably on par with the Olympics. So really right there, massive competition. Obviously, an Olympic gold might be a little higher, but in terms of the level of competition and the notoriety of the names there, right on par with the Summer Olympics in terms of track and field events. So while the championships host a variety of events from, steeplechase to the traditional marathon, the competition started in 1976 as a direct response to the International Olympic Committee dropping one specific event from the docket that year. It was later added back just 4 years later, but that event is the 50-kilometer race walk. The 50-kilometer race walk is the underrated event I want to focus on today.
All right.
Now, do you have much familiarity with competitive race walking?
I can confidently say none at all. Just the name sounds brutal to me.
Yeah, it's not a thing I had any familiarity with outside of one specific episode of the long canceled show Malcolm in the Middle, in which Bryan Cranston took it up.
Oh boy,
Vividly remember that from my childhood.
I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Yeah, and I'm gonna touch upon the sport in more depth, but they actually got the rules and form correct in that Malcolm in the Middle episode.
It's beautiful.
It is. Yeah, so as a brief primer, race walking is an endurance sport in which competitors race to travel a set distance in the fastest amount of time. Obviously, that sounds pretty similar to running, but with race walking, racers must have one foot in contact with the ground at all times, and the lead leg has to remain completely extended and straight until it passes under your body.
Wait, what? Hold on a second. Wow. Wow. Okay. All right. This is like again, this is brand new to me. This is all new information. I'm just trying to process this. It's I didn't expect it to get more intense.
Yeah, yeah. So, and these rules are not just arbitrary; they are strictly judged. And if a racer is given 3 warnings for breaking one of these rules, whether it be having both feet off the ground, or you know, not having that leg fully extended for that specific amount of time, 3 warnings by 3 different judges, they're automatically disqualified from the event. I saw one metric that said 1 in 8 competitors is disqualified out of every event. It seems like in the recent Olympics and, at the highest level, that number is a little lower. But notably, almost every Olympic event has someone disqualified for just that technique.
Jeez. So again, go back again, Lefty. The length on this race is how long again?
So they come in different varieties, various lengths. The one we're focusing on today is 50 kilometers.
50 kilometers. Okay. Just want to make sure. All right.
There's
I'm with
also
you.
a 30 and a 25 and an 11, I believe.
Right. So what we're talking, what, 30 miles
31
approximately?
miles,
So,
a
31
smidge
miles.
over
Okay.
31 miles.
All right. Okay.
So with these super strict rules on movement, competitors have developed this really wild technique in which the walkers basically kind of sway and swing their pelvis to increase their stride length and thus their speed. You know, if you think about running, the way that you run fast is to, have the longest stride length possible. That
Sure.
is very limited when you can't bend your knee and you have to have both feet on the ground. So they've developed this very wobbly sort of technique that is
Yeah.
a sight to behold.
And you got to think, I mean, not knowing or having familiarity with this whatsoever, can you imagine driving by or driving down the street and just looking over and seeing this? I mean,
It's kind of funny though. If you go back and watch clips of the Olympics, it's held in weird venues. It seems to be a kind of a back and forth event in which you know competitors go back and forth along a straight long distance that often runs parallel to roads or sidewalks, and that exact thing happens. People do just meander by and
yeah, I
kind of
can't
kind of
blame
look
them. Wow.
confused. So anyway, that said, right, the incredible speed walkers are able to maintain in this competition is absolutely incredible, and that's what makes this sport such an underrated feat in my opinion. So marathons are largely held as the pinnacle of athletic endurance. In the Olympics, the winner routinely runs 26.2 miles at a clip well under 5 minutes per mile, which is nothing to scoff at. That's an incredible feat of endurance,
Sure.
and a super, super fast,
Yeah,
way to
I know
run.
most of our us casual joggers slash runner out there. I mean, we're still trying to stay below that 10-minute mile. So I know I am personally. It's tough.
Exactly. So when it comes to race walking, specifically the 50-kilometer variety, winners at the Olympics and the World Athletic Championships routinely average sub 7-minute miles over the 31-mile event. So they are doing this gyrating, you know, pelvis walk in which they are walking 31 miles with under 7-minute miles.
My goodness, this
Which to me, in my opinion, that is an amazing feat of athletic ability.
it's an amazing feat, and I mean, I'm just trying to think of just the amount of pressure you are putting on your body, and just the like you said, the sort of stamina that it takes.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is that over that long distance, those 2.5 hours or so, or 3.5 hours, I guess. The runners, these race walkers, have to remain entirely focused because that form is so
Sure,
important.
to avoid disqualification, of course.
Yeah, if you zone out, for a few seconds every 15 minutes, that's enough to lose the competition in terms of disqualification.
And I gotta imagine too. I mean, your body just moving the way that it does has to be so much more susceptible to injury
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
you're not constantly focused like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying.
Well, and just to contextualize and kind of compare it, you know, running is a fairly natural movement to humans. Obviously, not everybody continues that practice, as they age, but running, just condensed, is simply an extension of like the evolutionary walk that we developed as a species.
Hmm.
When it comes to race walking, the movement is wholly unnatural and something that requires just extra level of insane discipline over running. Add in maintaining that form without flaw at a super high clip for 31 miles. The 50-kilometer race walk has to be among the most grueling and difficult events in modern track and field. And he's certainly one I encourage everyone to watch. And that kind of leads to a question. Do you think it's underrated, Bo?
You know, I yes, right off the bat, I absolutely believe this is underrated. I again, I was completely unfamiliar with race walking before it was brought to my attention here right now by you. Um, I did a little bit of reading up. Apparently, back in the 90s, Bob Costas made a comment referring to this as an artificial sport, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He compared it to a contest to see who can whisper the loudest, whatever the hell that means.
Oh, good old Bob Costas.
Right. But what strikes me is that looking back at just the 50 kilometer, in historically, I don't see any Americans whatsoever with on the men or women's side as far as record holders go. Now, as far as Russia and China goes, they dominate this. So, I mean, do you know? Is there a huge following in Russia and China as far as race walking goes? Because the majority of the record holders on both sides are, of Chinese descent mostly.
I think that both of those nations have pretty dedicated athletic departments. I guess you'd say
Sure.
they have dedicated a lot of money and effort to to be dominant at a variety of different sports. And if that sport exists, especially at the international level, there are you know people in those countries that wanna be dominant at it. So I think that contributes
Right.
a little bit. I know historically there might have been a little more national diversity in how that finished. I believe that the probably the most decorated of male race walkers at the 50-kilometer
Hmm.
event anyway, I believe is from Poland. So, you know, all kind of Eastern Europe, but at the same time,
Sure.
definitely some more diversity there.
Definitely. Yeah, I think, compared to other forms of racing, with this. the stride length being reduced. I mean, to achieve these competitive speeds, the focus that goes into it, the susceptibility, to injury, all these different factors. This takes a certain type of person. This takes dedication. It takes. I mean, I would be shocked to hear how long um, some of these competitive racers actually trained for prior
Yeah,
to
yeah.
these
And it
these
seems to
events.
actually be a sport that, you know, competitors have pretty impressive longevity. The peak window is not quite as short as it is in other sports, so that's another thing. You know, when you train for this, it seems like you're able to do it competitively and at a high level for an extended
Sure,
amount of time.
definitely.
All right, well, Bo, now that I've hyped up this incredible feat of endurance, fortitude, and just plainly difficult event in modern track and field, I hate to tell you that it's something that I won't be able to see at the World Athletic Championships this week, and it's not something that either of us will see in the 2024 Summer Olympics, as both organizations have dropped the event. And while that's a huge disappointment for us as spectators, I think that it's probably more heartbreaking to the competitors that have devoted their lives to the sport. That being said, I think it's far more valuable to get a perspective on the 50K race walk from one of the top athletes in the world. So today we're graciously joined by 2020 50K Olympic bronze medalist Evan Dunfee. Evan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the
My
podcast and
pleasure.
talk
Happy
about
to
this
be
event.
here.
So, as one of the foremost 50K race walkers in the world, why do you feel it's such an underrated event?
I love the 50K walk. I could never get sick of touting its greatness. I think it epitomizes what it means to endure. It symbolizes, at least in track and field, the most pure sense of the endure and endurance. It's this grueling foot race, longest foot race of the Olympics, on this 2 kilometer loop where you're just going around in circles, trying to get from point A to point B as fast as possible, but still having to adhere to these technical requirements that just make it that much harder. And um, I think from a spectator point of view, it's fantastic because you can park yourself in the middle of that course and watch the entire spectacle unfold. And it is a spectacle. I mean, watching the last 15K of a 50K, it's just incredible to see the resilience of the athletes who are suffering, who are grinding it away, who have already blown up and have over an hour left to go, and are just out there to tick that box of saying I finished. You have the guys up at the front of the race who are, either picking it up to 8.5 miles an hour. And then you have everyone in between who's fighting for positions, and 5 minutes can be erased in 5 kilometers. It's one of those races where you need to measure, and what I like the most about it from an athlete point of view is that you need to measure your energy perfectly. You have like 100%, and you need to parse that out over 50K, because it's not like a marathon where you can get to a last kilometer and say, well, I got tons in the tank, I'm going to full out sprint to the end here. There's no full out sprint because of the technical requirements. So you got to make sure you're getting to the end with zero left in the tank, but 5K too soon and you completely blow up, leave too much, and you can't leave it all out there. And I think that's what I love about it, is that game of chess, basically, of how do I beat the event. It's not about beating your competitor, it's not about beating anyone else there, it's about how do I conquer this event. And I think that's what resonates the most with people watching it, and what resonates with me most as an athlete in the event.
Yeah, absolutely. It just seems like such a mental and physical event. Some of the shorter races, it seems like, there's less to think about. It's just get to point A to point B. But, your race definitely seems like something where the whole time you have to be consistently thinking, as
And
well as,
and you don't
giving
have
that
to be the
maximum
fittest
effort.
athlete. I mean, that's the thing I love about it, is I can stand on the start line and I know that I am not the genetically most gifted athlete on that start line. But I know that the 50K takes so much more than that. You need to have incredible fitness. You need to have, you still need to have won the genetic lottery to stand on the start line of the Olympic 50K race walk final. But it's so much more than that. It's not the fittest athlete that wins. It's the athlete who can get their hydration right, get their cooling right, get their carbohydrates, their fueling correct. Miss any one of those by a tiny little bit, and it's complete devastation. We saw in Doha at the World Championships in 2019, the world record holder dropping out at 15K because he just couldn't. He didn't know how to compete in that heat, and he didn't prepare properly for it, and he thought his fitness would be good enough, and found out, less than a third of the way through that it wasn't.
Oh wow, that's got to be heartbreaking as a competitor as well, just to not be prepared for the drastic difference in
it's stupidity, I think, for the athletes that show up ill prepared. They have no one to blame but themselves. It's not like Doha was ever going to be cold. Same with Tokyo.
Yeah,
or
that's true.
What became Sapporo later on. So that's one thing I love about it is that preparation, knowing that I can level the playing field by getting the science right. Getting all that sort of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you don't see when the race goes. But I love nothing more than seeing an athlete go out and I go, oh, you've gone out too hard, or you're not pouring water on yourself. Like, you're gonna really suffer in the second half of this race. And it's really, that's what I love in the race when I'm racing, is looking at those athletes going, I'm gonna beat you because you're doing this one little thing that's stupid, and it's gonna allow me to come past you in 10 or 15K.
Totally. That must be a great feeling in the moment to, just know that you have that little edge.
Sure.
So now that the IOC and World Athletic has dropped the 50K race from the largest competitions, what do you think the future of the event looks like?
So, we're not going to see any more 50Ks. That's pretty certain. There's nothing in it for it to do, but there is some good representation in masters athletics, particularly in the longer stuff, in the centuries, doing the 100Ks, 100 miles, 24-hour races. So the purest kind of endurance aspect of it will still exist. And then at the elite kind of world championship Olympic level, we have the 20K still. Bit of a sprint in my mind, but I don't think it gives the audience, I don't think it gives the spectators that same feeling of, holy crap, this is hard. You show up to a 20K and you go, oh, these guys are moving really fast and they're doing it by walking, and that's pretty impressive. But the 50K just hit differently in terms of watching it and all that stuff. So I don't really know. I mean, it's a fringe sport to begin with. We're not winning any athletics popularity contests, and we're well aware of that. So, I do believe that the future is pretty tenuous. The IOC would love to get rid of race walking altogether. They hate us. They can't make any money off of us. We're a free event, which is one of the things I love. I really struggle with the Olympics and the legacy that they leave behind, and some of the devastation and all the kind of not so nice things that the Olympics represents. But I rationalize that with my event being a free event for anyone to come and watch and be 3 feet away from that magic and see that. I do think there's utility and power in that. But from the IOC perspective, it's, oh, we can't make money off of this. And what do you mean you only need 1 kilometer of road to be closed down? There's no giant facilities that we can build and make. Oh, okay, we don't really like this very much. And so it's sad. I think race walking has kind of lived, towards the end of its lifespan, unfortunately. But my position that I find myself in is just being the person who can promote walking, can promote, who better to tout the benefits of walking than a professional elite walker. And so even if the sport doesn't continue to exist, I think the lessons I've learned through it and the what I can share about just the benefits of going out and going for a walk, as simple as that sounds. And I think that's where we need to transition to, even within athletics. You think here at the World Athletics Championships in Eugene, yeah, like we're a free event where people could come up. So let's use the race walk as a starting point to get people to come and create a festival, create an environment that people want to show up. When they're there, yeah, let them watch the race walk, but let's turn them into athletics fans. Let's turn them into track and field fans. Let's introduce them to all the other events. Let's have some stuff set up so kids can try the sport of athletics and just use it as that kind of entry point to get more fans involved in the whole sport. I think that's where I would love to see the future of race walking go, is kind of help be that entry point, not to race walking fandom necessarily. You'll gain some race walking fans along the way for sure, but more just an entry point into introducing more people to the sport in general and getting more kids involved and using the freeness and the closeness of that tiny little loop, unlike the marathon where they're off running, big 14, 20, 30K loops. Just use all those things to your advantage and sell the sport that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched upon, being an ambassador just towards walking. And that's one of the things I love about, your social media presence, is that you're very observant of the built world around you and, how you interact with that. And I think that's a perspective that a lot of people could, use and grow, just knowing and observing that, there aren't a lot of trees in this area. Why is that? Why is this a parking lot versus,
when you move around your city at 12 kilometers an hour versus, or, whatever that, 7.5 miles an hour versus 30, 40 miles an hour, you see it way differently. And it creates a whole new set of questions that you ask yourself about, well, why is this like this? And can it be better? And, I'll never get sick of talking about the utility of walking, going for a walk and having places that are walkable and all these things, are so important. And if I can be an ambassador for that, that's, I think, a great way to use my career and the lessons that I've learned through sport to share that message.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just to, circle back to the beginning, how did you get started in?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's not really a sport that ranks high on the risk of on the list of popularity, but I wanted to be good at something. I was 10 years old, shortest kid in the class, big red curly hair, thick glasses, and I love sport, but I was pretty uncoordinated and late developing, and so I just hadn't really found my thing. And then one day, my elementary school, a little popsicle stick run. Every lap of the field you run at lunch, you got a popsicle stick, and I went out there and I ran the entire 45 minutes and got all the popsicle sticks, and I was like, oh wow, I'm good at something, and that was kind of my stepping stone into joining a track club. And then a year later, like completely serendipitously, my brother had his appendix taken out. He was in grade 8 at the time in high school, and his high school coach was like, hey, there's this thing called race walking. I know nothing about it, but maybe you can like stay fit. It won't pull on your stitches in your stomach as much. Then when you heal, you come back to running and you haven't lost any fitness. So he went and tried it. I think he finished third in his first race, got a medal. Probably only 4 kids in the race, but he got a medal. And as the younger brother, I was like, oh, well, if Adam can do it, like, why, how hard can it be? It must be pretty easy. So I'm going to do it too. And went to my first race and won my first race. The kid next to me on the start line was the kid that won all the races, and he was like, oh, what do you want to do? And I panicked. I hadn't thought about that, and so I blurted out I wanted to break 5 minutes for the half-mile race, and he told me I'd never do that on my first try. I went 4:58, and I beat that kid, and I was kind of hooked. Yeah, that was from that moment on. I knew that was the path I was going to take. I knew that I wanted to be an Olympian. I knew I wanted to go to the Olympics, and my first walking race was like, oh, maybe this will be the sport that I go to the Olympics in.
Yeah, and you
succeeded. 22 years later.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that medal. Do you have any predictions here?
I'm gonna back my training partner and good friend Perseus Karlstrom. He's just coming off a bronze medal in the 20K walk, and he won our world team championships earlier this year. And the guy's just a beast. So if we were allowed to bet on sports, and I was so inclined to do so, I think Percy's a tough one not to back. But the Japanese are strong. A lot of 20K guys are stepping up to the 35K because the 35K is basically just a fancy 20K. It's not halfway between a 20 and a 50. It's much closer to being a 20K than it is a 50K. So think some of us 50K guys are a little bit out of our depth, but we'll see. It should be fun. That first major championships over a new distance. It's going to be a lot of athletes still figuring it out. So I think you could see a lot of carnage. I think you could see a lot of mistakes tactically. I think it'll be interesting, whatever the result is.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see you compete on Sunday. It's a little unfortunate they slotted you into the earliest time slot of the whole 10 days at 6 a.m., but I am looking forward to it. And again, thank you so much for coming on and talking about the 50K.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you guys for talking about it too.
All right, Bo. So now that you've heard me talk about the 50K, and more importantly, one of the foremost competitors and ambassadors to the sport of race walking speak about it, do you think it's safe to say the 50K race walk is underrated?
Yes, definitely underrated. Thanks again to Evan for actually coming on and being able to give us a lot more insight than what we've had before. But as we touched on earlier in the episode, prior to the interview, the amount of strength and stamina that goes into the actual sport is, quite a bit what you put your body through. So I can say after our conversation here that I agree it is 100% underrated, and I know we won't be able to watch a ton more, but I have become a fan.
Yeah, it's a real shame we won't get to witness that the 50K anymore. But as Evan alluded to, there are the longer endurance events that we can catch, and he'll be competing in the 35K race walk at the World Athletic Championships this Sunday, July 24th, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And you can catch that on NBC's streaming platform Peacock. Or if you're in Eugene, you can come say hi to me at the event, and we can cheer on Evan in person.
Definitely. Listen, this is a great show we had today. Thanks to our first official guest, Evan Dunfee, Canadian medalist and future councilman in Canada. Possibly.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully.
And he's got our support. He's running for city council there in Vancouver suburb of Richmond. So best of luck to him, both in the race on the streets of Eugene and the race in the streets of Richmond.
In the streets of Richmond. You heard it here. Give us your thoughts on Twitter at _pod. That's _rated_pod. As always, check us out on Spotify and Apple Music or anywhere that podcasts can be found. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in, and until next time.